This is podcast 5 with Sean Lee. Sean, welcome.
Yeah, bro, I'm glad to be here. Glad to finally be able to talk to you in like a setting like this. Um, you know, I think this is pretty different from, our other talks that we've had because this is gonna actually be like on the internet,
Really?
for everyone to see. So
Is that going to make the talk different?
no, no, no,
No?
bro. I'm
No?
ready. I'm ready to,
Full genuine Sean
yeah,
Lee
genuine.
coming to
Yeah,
get the
bro.
internet, huh? All
Yeah,
right.
bro.
I guess we could kick it off this way, right? I know that based on your social media, what you post, um, just what you do on your Saturdays. You like to attend a lot of college sports, right? College basketball, college football, right? So
Yeah.
you're like the exact opposite of me. I've never attended a single Rutgers football game, never attended a single basketball game. So what is it about college sports that attracts you or you think is good?
Yeah, for me, it's sort of like having that school spirit, I guess, like being, a part of someone or something where there's like so many other like fans of like all different ages who like come together for like one specific team.
So
Um,
it's for the school spirit.
yeah, yeah, and I guess the experience as well. I mean, like Rutgers basketball plays in Jersey Mike's Arena, or formerly known as the Rack, and like let me tell you, like you cannot find an atmosphere like that anywhere else in college basketball. It's so cool to like experience that in person.
Mm.
um so just being around in that environment, rooting for a team, I think that's what attracts me to college sports so much.
Same thing for football. You would drive all the way to Penn State to cheer on Rutgers.
Yeah, bro, like it's a lot of dedication. But I gotta support my school in some way, right?
Do you have a buddy that does it with you, or it's just you and school
No,
spirit, I
I do
guess?
have a buddy that goes with me.
Oh,
He
okay.
he is like he's a way bigger of a fan than I am. He knows like so much more than I do about college sports, but um, yeah, he normally invites me out to these events, and I sort of just go and have a good time.
I see, I see. And it's a whole day then, really. Your whole Saturday's basically watching the event or
Yeah, pretty much like getting ready, getting there early, to get a parking spot,
mm,
and then leaving. Yeah, it's pretty much a day thing. Yeah.
mm. You exhausted from doing it, or what,
Yeah, bro.
what keeps you doing it? Because like for me, it's just like, all right, for me, I guess I find it a waste of time, but
Mhm.
I guess you see some value to it. So what is it?
Bro, it's just the experience. That's literally it. Like you can't find that anywhere else where it's so loud and people are cheering for the same team and rooting for the same team. Like you can't find that anywhere else. And for me, it's basically just the experience, of because it's very hard after college to, I guess, like have the time or the energy to be willing to go to those games. So
Right.
I see it as like a not a once in a lifetime opportunity, but like if I don't do it now, I'm probably not gonna be able to do it later. So
I see. Carpe diem, seize the day, right? Seize
yeah,
the
bro.
advantage of the opportunities and all that.
Yeah.
So that's an aspect of college, right? And I guess that's a big change from high school. And I know that you're in your sophomore year right now. And so what other big changes do you feel between high school, college? Which one do you like better?
Oh man, I like college way better. I feel like in high school everything was so like rigid. Like you were basically forced to go to class for like 7 hours or like 8 hours. You have to wake up at like 6:30 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I just felt like I didn't really have that much freedom, I guess. But now in college, where it's like I actually get to pick my own classes. I don't have to go to class for 8 hours every day.
Mm,
I actually have time to go around and do things that I want to do, without teachers or like my parents breathing down my neck.
uh-huh,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
I think that's something that I really like about college. Is like you sort of have a lot more freedom than you did in high school. I mean, which is understandable, right? Like in high school, you're like
Right.
15 to 18, right?
Mm-hmm.
But generally in terms of the lifestyle, yeah, college is way better. Like, I don't know how I woke up at 6:30 a.m. like for like just 4 years, like consistently. Like I have no idea how I did it. Like I can barely wake up at like 9 a.m. anymore.
Are you
Like,
worried, like after graduating, that work is more like high school, and so it reverts back to kind of like a high school schedule?
yeah, I was thinking about this the other day because like most people's work days start at what, like 8 a.m. Sometimes even earlier, right?
Right.
Um, so I guess I have to somehow force myself to get back to a reasonable sleep schedule, you
I
know?
see.
Yeah.
Right. How about courses? I felt that with high school, like you said, it's very rigid, and it's almost you pack more into it, right?
Mhm.
Do you feel you're learning as much in college, or uh, perhaps learning less? I felt I learned. I felt there wasn't as much push to study, but how about for you?
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. Like in high school, it's like all your homeworks are graded. Like your
Hmm.
teacher
Hmm.
literally goes around and like
Breeze
looks
down your
at it. So
neck.
yeah, exactly. So you're kind of like forced to do the work unless
Right.
you want to like fail, right? But you know, I think for me, right, like I definitely learned a lot more in high school, I feel like, or there was more variety in high school
Right.
compared to now. I feel like right now I'm sort of like just coasting through. Um,
Right.
like
So
not the minimum, but like not learning as much or not studying the same way that I did in high school. Like if that makes
So high school students out there listening, get to college quick because you get much more relaxed, right?
yeah,
But one
yeah,
thing that's interested about your college and high school experience is that your senior year was when COVID started, right? March 2020.
yeah,
It's March now when we're recording. It's been 2 years, right?
yeah.
I thought it was just gonna be spring break and then you might come back. But then it
Hmm.
turned out it was that semester, so your graduation, and then the semester after, and now it's even now it's not fully recovered. Like this semester you started
Yeah,
off still social distancing, right, with
yeah.
Omicron. So what did you lose from COVID, and do you feel you gained anything?
Bro, I lost a lot from COVID actually. Um,
Experiences.
like experience wise, yeah.
Hmm.
I think the biggest one for me, like at the time when COVID started, was my senior tennis season. Um,
Oh.
so it was really cool because the year before there was only one senior on the team.
Mm.
So pretty much everybody on varsity got a year better. Um, and like we put so much work in the off season, so we were actually looking very, very good going into the spring season of tennis. But I think like after 2 or 3 practices, we were just there was one case in Berkeley Heights, and then we were just all sent home
Wow.
for the rest of the season. So for me, that was like at the start, it was like pretty hard. Um, and obviously like the bigger things like graduation. Yeah, we had an in-person graduation, but does that really count? Like we literally were outside in like lawn chairs. I don't think that really counts. We missed out on like prom. Just uh, and then like college too, like freshman year, like when you're supposed to be on campus,
Mm.
and you just hold up at home doing online class. And even like now, I still don't really know like the true college experience,
Hmm.
um, because it's still online. Like people are like wearing masks everywhere. There's like I don't
Right.
know a bunch of different things. But also, my freshman year was the year that you were a senior. Um, and I was actually like looking forward to like
Uh.
going to college with you for like that one year. Um,
Uh-huh.
and like there were so many other like brothers and sisters in your grade too that I wanted to, hang out with as
Mm.
students, but that didn't really happen.
Mm.
So yeah, I feel like I lost a lot from COVID, but
The experiences.
yeah.
One thing you told me about though is applying for jobs or internships, that
Mhm,
you don't have to go to a physical career fair, right?
yeah.
Most of the stuff is all done online. So on the job and internship aspect, has it been easier?
Yes and no. So like it's definitely more convenient to do things online. I think that goes for everything.
Right.
But especially in jobs, right? It's so much easier for people from these companies just to hop on a Zoom instead of having to come to Rutgers, right? And then, set up everything. So I think in terms of that, I think it's easier, but it's also harder because like it's hard to make a genuine connection online through Zoom. It's much easier for me, at least, when you're talking to someone in
Mm-hmm.
person. Um, so yeah, I think, yes and no in terms of like jobs and how online has made it.
How about mental health? Right. You said that everyone's sitting in front of a screen, right? You personally lost a lot of experiences, but you've kept yourself going. I know some kids here are completely devastated by um, being alone. They've
Yeah.
probably dropped out of school. Haven't been going well. Things have not been going well. So I guess what's it that keeps you going? Or is would like are there some moments where you just think that this is you want to scream?
Um, I mean, for me, like my personality is like, if I had to choose between like going to a party or staying at home, like I'd stay at home 10 out of 10 times. So I think like, um, for me, like what kept me going was just keeping myself busy. So
Mm,
like for me, like my freshman year, that was video games. Like, I
mm,
didn't feel like I needed to go outside because like I had video games and I had like online friends and whatever. But I think now it's sort of catching up to me now because like I only have a couple of friends on campus, like outside of church.
mm-hmm.
Um, so I felt like, if my freshman year was in person, like it would be a different story. But for
Gotcha.
me, like being online hasn't really impacted my mental health that hard, luckily.
Mm, mm,
Um, and I mean, I can't tell you, like, I don't know like a specific reason, but it's just how it is for me.
I see. Why don't we back up to the talking about COVID policy, right? You weren't able to be on campus your freshman year. Other schools were able to. So let's say
Mhm.
the president of Rutgers is listening to this podcast right now. Would you condemn him, criticize him for the COVID policy, like not letting students come back? Because this is a real political question right now, right? I think the San Francisco, I don't know if you checked the news on that. There was like the progressive candidates that got recalled in the recall election because they didn't open schools. They were focused on
Mhm.
renaming the schools, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So do you blame the administrators for taking away these experiences from you?
To be honest, not really. I mean, it's a real they're in a really tough spot at the end of the day because they have to make a decision that affects everybody, like literally
Mm,
everybody that goes to Rutgers. And obviously there's some people that are upset and are happy, but I personally wouldn't. I mean, I probably would have done the same thing, my freshman year. I mean, I think we sometimes forget like how bad it was. This was
mm,
like way before like the vaccine, right?
mm,
When we still didn't know too much. Um, in terms of going forward, though, I would like to see them, remove the mask mandate and, the vaccine mandate. But I think what they did back in, the fall of 2020, like to the spring, I think they made the right choice, to be honest. Yeah, and I
okay,
wouldn't blame them for, I guess, like the lost experience. Yeah.
I see, I see. But how about for younger kids? Like for you, I guess, senior year, sure you lost out on these experiences, right? But
Mhm.
imagine if you were in kindergarten or Woodruff, right? Elementary
Yeah,
school.
yeah,
You
that's
can't you
tough.
can't sit in front of a screen. It's not just
Yeah,
tough, it's impossible,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
that's the time of your life where you're supposed to make social connections, right? To
Hmm.
like learn how to interact with other people. Do you think this is like devastated a whole generation, or there's a way back? You think you can see this after you grow up 5 years, 5 to 10 years from now, that like the younger generation, they just don't know how to talk to people, or they'll
Mm.
learn eventually? What do you think about that?
I think they'll learn eventually. I don't think like that generation is doomed.
Mm,
But I think, yeah, it's really rough.
mm-hmm,
For especially for kids, um, and they're missing out on a lot of like the period of time where they're building up like their social skills, right?
right.
They're just like sitting from screen. But to be honest, I think that can be learned. to be on
Mm,
like down the road. I don't think this is like them being staring at a screen for a couple years will dramatically change like the course of their life. But um, but I think that's why you see a lot of parents who are sort of frustrated and want to keep schools open and
mm-hmm.
you know
Right.
like and what like last year even like when a lot of people were calling for schools to be reopened, there was a lot of backlash um from I guess the left or whoever was
Mm.
peddling that. But um
Right. Their teacher
yeah.
union in Chicago walked out, right? They went on strike.
Mhm.
What do you think about that? Should they have went on strike?
Like
Or
went on strike because they didn't want schools to reopen.
yes.
Yeah, no, that's terrible. I think like if anyone should understand like what kids are going through, it should be the teachers.
But the
um
teachers are afraid of their safety, right?
I mean, look, the like the risk of transmission like among kids is like kids are pretty much like not at risk of COVID, like serious side effects of COVID.
Mm,
And yeah, I mean, like I guess like I can see why teachers would be afraid of their own safety, but like there are safety measures like in place, like even before
right.
the vaccine. Like, what's the point of wearing a mask if like, you're not going to apply that to like a school setting, right? I think.
Mm, mm.
Um,
So you don't blame these college administrators, but you don't side with the teachers on not going to school, not going to school and going on strike.
yeah, I think it's different though, because like that's from like, so when I'm talking about from like an administrator, like a Rutgers point of view, that's like everybody, like even that's like not teachers making that decision. That's like the administrators making the decision for both teachers and students. I think
Right.
when the teachers themselves sort of make that decision themselves, I think that's where
Ah.
it's like, you know, because like they're directly interacting with the students. I think it's much different dynamic between like an administrator of
Mm,
Rutgers and the college students versus like a kindergarten teacher and the kindergartners.
right.
Yeah.
I see. So
But yeah,
we've talked a lot about experiences, whether it's sports, going through college, COVID, missed out experiences, right? College is expensive these days.
yep,
It comes with a price tag, right?
yep.
It's not just the courses that you get that I guess you do pay for the courses, that's your tuition money, right? But is there some sort of value there, I guess, that isn't bought with the college with like college experience, like the college experience?
That's a
Like
tough
let's
question.
say like because like everything's been online on Zoom, right?
Mhm.
Technically, maybe online courses would have been better than what your professors put together because they're used to teaching in person, right? And an online course probably even cheaper than tuition, right?
Mhm.
So what is the value of going to college now, I guess in person versus just learning on your own?
Yeah, I mean, like, you, let's be honest here. Like, you need a degree, like from university. Like, it's very very hard to get a job just by
True.
taking some online classes. And
Mm,
I don't really like when people say like, oh, like you don't need college to be successful. And that's true to an extent, but you only hear about like the success stories.
mm-hmm.
Like you don't hear about the
Right.
people who dropped out of college and are now like homeless or living paycheck to paycheck, right? Like
Mm,
now, like if you want a decent job making above $50,000 a year, you're most likely gonna need a college degree. Like that's the safest and like the most risk averse way of
mm.
going to the middle class. Um, and
Why do
it
you
sucks that. Oh yeah, go ahead.
what go? Well, it sucks that
Oh no, I was gonna say it sucks that it costs a lot, but that's just how it is, I
I
guess.
was just about to ask that. Why does it cost so much? And sometimes when you graduate college and go for your first job, what you do, you didn't need your degree for. So why is it that it's so high, do you think?
I mean, it's just nobody can do anything about it. Like colleges can charge as much as they want, like if you take a look at the cost of going to college for like the past like couple decades, like it's crazy, like
Right.
compared to like median household income. I mean, like I don't think anybody's keeping these tuitions in check, to be honest. Like who's gonna say to Harvard, like, oh, you're charging too much? Like,
Mm.
who's gonna say that to them?
So,
Yeah.
so you think colleges have become businesses,
Oh yeah, 100%. Like hundred
and they're
percent.
are they unregulated monopolies then? Because you said that no one can
Um,
keep them in check, right?
not yet. I mean,
Can,
like there are other options. Like you can go to community college for like way cheaper, for
mm.
example. But
But people
um,
want to go to Ivy Leagues for the name, right? So are you more paying for the degree, the piece of paper, and the name of the school rather than the knowledge you gain from a certain school?
yeah, I would say to a certain extent that's true. I mean, like you said, like sometimes you get a job and you don't really apply any of the skills that your degree says you learned.
Mm,
Um, and I think like honestly, most jobs are like that. Like especially in finance, like you're not applying everything you learned in your finance classes if you're working in like a corporate finance job, right? I
right.
think, yeah, in if you're like a biology major, right, you're not applying every or like a chemistry major, you're not applying everything you're learning, even if you become a scientist, right? So I
All right.
think the world is much more specialized than what the basic majors there are there. So
Right. But let's just talk supply and demand, right? I guess there's only a
okay,
certain amount of people that can get into top schools, right? Rutgers is not too bad of a school, but still, even Rutgers, only a certain amount of people can get in, right? Demand for college is very high, like you said. If you want a good paying job, it seems that college is the most surest way to get a good paying job. But why is it that online courses that offer the knowledge, same knowledge from college, it would increase the supply then of people who can do it, but the demand's not there? Do you think the colleges are undercutting it, or people have just attached a value, I guess, to the degree rather than knowledge? Or is it that there's something missing to online degrees that colleges have?
well the thing that well I guess like online courses lack is the credibility, even
Mm,
like if it's just a facade of credibility by like the big colleges, I guess, right? Like employers, they want to have that credibility that you went to like a good school
mm,
versus like some online school that nobody's ever heard of, even though like potentially you could learn more from that online school than you did at like your 4-year university, right?
right.
So it I think it's a little bit more on perception, I guess, in terms of like rather than like actual knowledge that you gain. Um,
Mm.
it's just how it is nowadays. Yeah.
Do you think government should regulate then the skyrocketing tuition that colleges charge? Because you said that no one can keep it down, right? And if it's the case that you need a lot to pay a lot to get a lot, then
Yeah.
wouldn't it exacerbate inequality? Because then if you're poor and you need to make money for your family, it's hard to also go to school at the same time, or even impossible for some people. So has education become a social ladder?
Has it become a social ladder?
Like we use the social ladder, it's just I guess you work hard, right?
Mhm.
On the That's like the American dream mentality. You come to this country with nothing, you work hard. Of course, there's a lot of variation to that. Sometimes a lot of people work hard and they don't get anything, right? But that's the thing, right? And then maybe your children, by you working hard, they can get better opportunities, and then so on and so forth. Education, it seems, it's like, you get you have money so you can help your children with SATs, right? Boot camp or whatnot. They get into a good
Mhm.
college, they find a good paying job, and then it's all through education in a way. Has it replaced like business then as the social ladder to higher class?
Not as bad as I think you make it out to seem. there's still a lot of like, like affirmative action, like I would say it's like big problem. I mean, like
Big
there,
problem, you say.
yeah, like it. I mean, for Asians at least, right? It's a
Especially
problem.
Asian males. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
straight Asian male. But like in terms of like if you're poor or if you're from like if you're African American, you're from a poor background, like yeah, colleges will take that into account. Which I don't think that's necessarily a good or a bad thing, but there's like flaws to that. I
Mm,
feel like nowadays people just look at the color of your skin rather than like your quote unquote like social class. Like you could be African American but live in a $3 million house and still like have a better chance of getting into like an Ivy League school than some black kid who grew up in like the Bronx.
mm,
Um, and I think maybe like a better way to do that would to look at like I guess like family income or like the way you grew up rather than
mm.
just your race. Because like what if you're like an Asian kid who like lives in Chicago, who like lives in the hood in Chicago, like but colleges like only see you as like this Asian male because that's what you put on your college app, right?
Right.
Um, but
Let's talk a little bit about affirmative action, college policies. I don't know if your grade was the one where SAT became optional, but it's optional now, right? Temporarily because of COVID.
oh okay,
Did you know
okay.
that?
No, I like heard something about it, but
Yeah, SAT is
yeah.
optional for applicants. And it might be indefinitely for the future because they were talking about SAT. There's like a correlation with like your family income rather than, I guess, your intelligence. Because if you have more
Mhm.
money, like I was saying, you can pay for your kid to take classes or go to boot camp to get better,
Yeah.
right? Is it a good idea to get rid of the SAT?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I, I don't see like the problem with it. Like obviously you said like people who will get higher scores tend to come from families with higher income, but at the
Mm,
same time, I feel like colleges are like accounting for that.
mm,
Like in their in their applications, right? It's
right,
your college app is way more than your SAT score. I mean, like
right.
your SAT score is maybe like 10% or at most like 20% of what colleges take into account when you know looking at an applicant. Um, but the biggest thing is like, what are they going to replace it with? Like, they have to replace it with something, right? Unless like everything else just like becomes like way more important. Right?
So that's the thing. They might not replace it with anything except affirmative action.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
mean,
if you remove one standard, you would hope there's something else. But I think that the only thing is by race then. So I think that would exacerbate. For me, I see that as exacerbating the problem of race because you don't have any other metrics to measure the
yeah,
student by,
yeah.
right? And so I think it's. You think affirmative action is racist?
Do I think affirmative action is race?
Yeah, because you
Um,
say it's by the color of your skin, right? Everything Martin Luther King's, well, not everything. I know that his I Have a Dream speech, right? My children
mhm,
won't be judged by the color of their skin, right? But by who, like their character, who they are as a person. Do you like this person as a person rather than skin color? Do you think this is kind of like reverse discrimination in that it's a nicer type of discrimination as trying to help people, but it's still discrimination?
a little bit, yeah. I think like nowadays the term racism is like no one knows like what it means anymore. I feel like the
Oh,
term is
okay.
just so broad, but
Hmm.
I think for me at least, like racism always meant like discrimination, like strict discrimination against another race of
Hmm.
people. And I feel like, at least in America now, it seems like the only people who can be racist are white people. Like it's never like people can like black people can be racist to white people or Asian people can be racist to white people. Like no, it's like nowadays, like I feel like people who are called racist are just like white people, or people put too much
Hmm.
emphasis on only white people can be racist, which I think is like totally wrong.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but like affirmative action, I think, yeah, I mean, in a sense, I guess. I mean, it's like I understand it's sort of like supposed to give like underrepresented minorities a chance or like a better chance of going to college.
Hmm.
Um, So,
How would you define racism?
I mean, for me, it's like putting down another race just because of the color of their skin and no other metric.
Hmm. What if
So,
you lift another race above the other race? Would that be racist?
yeah, I would
That would be
I
too.
I would say to an extent, yes. I mean, that's sort of what white people did for like so like to black people for like centuries, right?
Mm,
Um,
mm.
yeah, because
Do
in
you
a
think?
sense, right, that is putting down another race. Like if you're elevating like one above the other.
Yes, that's right. I was trying to see if yeah, you got both went both ways. So, okay. There's a lot of talk about Asian community and its role between, I guess, white people and black people, right? I think I don't know if you heard of model minority myth, right? White
Yeah.
people point to Asians as successful, right?
Mhm.
But then in times of trouble, they blame Asian people or they cast Asian people away. But Asian people, I think, also have some racial bias, right? I think sometimes you hear people say that, oh, black people live in poor neighborhoods, right? Things like that. And I guess that's considered racist. But I guess for like our parents or Asians that came over, immigrants, right? They didn't grow up in the US. So can you still attribute that to systemic racism? Because systemic racism implies that it's systemic within the American system, right? But if people are coming from abroad, they weren't part of the US. So they grew up with, I guess, what we consider racist values and they brought it over. So then is everyone a racist, I guess, or distinguishes upon race in a certain way?
Well, I think the origin of a lot of racist ideas is from personal experiences or just general
Mm,
stereotypes. I don't think it's necessarily something like systemic, but it's
mm,
like from your experiences, like or parents, like they come from, Asia and they come here and, they notice that I guess a lot of black people grow up in, poor areas. So they might just automatically like assume that like all black people are poor.
mm.
Um, I don't think it's necessarily something that they brought from Asia. It's just what they've seen here. Um, and I don't think like I don't necessarily like, blame them for
Mm.
thinking that. I mean, it's
So
definitely based on their experiences though, rather than
that's
something.
something I want to talk about too. I got in trouble for saying that black people grow up in poor neighborhoods, right? Because I guess that's a stereotype in a way,
Yeah, I mean,
right? But it is, I guess you can't, it's an association, but not, association does not imply causation thing. It's not that black people chose to grow up in poor neighborhoods, right? I guess it's that there's certain circumstances that I guess keep them in that cycle. But you see, this is like political correctness, right?
yeah,
There's a way to talk. It's hard to, and then if I just said like black people grow up in poor neighborhoods, I probably get condemned for it, But even though I'm trying to figure out a way to talk about the issue, at least to get it out. You can correct me and tell me later. It's like maybe I didn't even have the intention to like that like it's just black people are naturally
yeah,
poor, right? But then I think people are so focused on speech and the intention doesn't matter anymore. And so, do you find it's hard to talk, or there's some things that we can't talk about because of this political correctness type of thing?
yeah. There's so many things that we can't talk about because of political correctness. I mean, like what you said about like how black people grow up in poor neighborhoods. Like, I don't see any problem with that statement whatsoever. But I'll just bring up this one thing though. I feel like my generation, or at least the the years like following, my year, we're very, very emotional people.
Hmm.
And in a sense, we're much softer than I guess generations before. That's the one thing I've noticed.
Why is that, you think? Is this
Um,
social media?
yeah, yeah. I,
You
I
just
was gonna say social media.
you were
I
gonna
mean,
say that.
like if you just take a look at like the social media people are using nowadays, especially like the young people. Like they're using what, like TikTok, Twitter, which is like so destructive to like one's mind because you're sort of trapped in like this bubble, um, like this like echo chamber of like ideas, and you're sort of like don't really know like how to think. So you have all these like ideas and emotions coming to you at this one time, which sort of makes you as a person more emotional, right? And I
What
think
what
hmm,
can toughen people up? Get off
like
social
not take
media?
everything so personally, I guess, or like I mean, yeah, that's I don't know if getting off social media would like help, but I think it's just it's a little too late actually, like
It's a little too late.
a little too
Oh.
late. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of the people who are on the left support or like of the younger generation, right? Because I
Mm,
feel like a lot of ideas on the left, and this is not a good or bad thing, but just from what I've seen, are they're like very emotional, like very in the times based,
mm.
um, like very instantaneous. It's like people like AOC, right? People just like see her as someone who's like very charismatic, but
Yeah,
that's
she has
all
a
they
large
see.
Instagram following,
Yeah,
right?
large Instagram following, or
She's
like
advocating for climate change.
yeah, and it's
Yeah,
like
raising the minimum wage.
yeah, and I feel like people just like hear these things and they're just like, okay, that's really, really good, but they don't really go deeper than that and like sort of like slow down a little bit and like really think about like what like even on the right and the left, like what these people are like putting out.
Sure, the
They're just so caught
Republicans.
up in like, oh, raising the minimum wage. That's because like it's good for minorities or like whatever, you know. But like,
Let's talk about that actually. Let's go into that. And let's get into the ugliness because I think this is an important point. Let's use minimum wage as an example. It sounds very good,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Let's make everyone $15 minimum wage. But let's think a little deeper than that because I think what Democrats tend to do is they tend to appeal, I guess, appeal to the emotion or like I want to care for you, right? And
yeah.
I'm gonna care for you by giving you $15 minimum wage if you vote for me. What's the issue with that? You're a finance major, right? Is there a problem with that?
Yeah, I feel like people just think about $15 an hour and they're like, okay, like that's $15 an hour going to my pocket. And
Mm,
that's literally to the extent that they think about it. They don't think about it any deeper than that.
right.
But it's actually really interesting because a lot of the big companies, like they don't mind actually like raising the minimum wage to $15. I think like Amazon did something
Amazon,
like kind of
Target
similar
did
to that.
that. Yeah.
Right,
It's not
right.
just $15 minimum wage, healthcare,
Yeah.
and also college, right? Free college
Hmm.
tuition.
Yeah. But you know what that does? You know what that does to smaller businesses who
Mm,
maybe cannot afford to pay $15 an hour? Right. What are
they
you
don't hire
doing at
people.
yeah, exactly. Or like what are you doing at that point then if you raise the minimum wage to 15, but a lot of these small businesses can't pay it?
It actually
Like
hurts you guys, the college students.
yeah, and they go out of business, right? Like they don't have anybody to like run their stuff. Like it's too
Right.
expensive for them to maintain. And what does that do for the bigger companies? It sort of elevates them even higher,
So it
right?
makes
Because they
them
have
a
less competition.
monopoly,
Exactly. Which is why like they
which
don't
is
mind at all like raising the minimum wage to $15
and
and giving all these
the people who are advocating for the minimum wage, they tend to not like these monopolies like Amazon, right? I
yeah,
don't know if you see on Instagram, like they're like boycott Amazon, don't buy stuff from Amazon. But their
yeah,
behavior for the minimum wage is what's is what's putting everyone else out of business, right?
yeah.
Would you say? But I
Yeah, and
think,
that
but
goes
I don't
back
think,
to
oh, that goes back to
I was just gonna that goes back to what I said about they just think about $15 in their pocket and nothing further than that.
shallow,
Yeah,
soft in a way,
yeah,
right? We're not thinking, we're not critically thinking, well, what's the other side of the issue,
yeah.
right? How about for you? I think it harms you guys the most, and for me too. You know how it's so hard to find an internship or find a job?
Mhm.
I think that has to do with minimum wage because companies now will only hire someone who they know for sure will do well. You're not going to get, like we talk about how the US is a land of opportunity, land of second chances. This is destroying it, I think,
Mm.
because back then, like maybe you passed on newspaper cashier, or you just work a job that's below minimum wage, right? It doesn't take much skill, right? You do it, you at least can get some money, right? It keeps you going. What the minimum wage does is it cuts out these entry level jobs, or not even entry level jobs, just like the summer jobs, or like things that
Yeah.
need to be done, right? And so it, like, now the only way is an internship. An internship you don't even get paid for, so you can't bargain with your employer and say like, I want this amount of money, or I can go below minimum wage. I just want the experience, right? And so
Yeah.
I don't
No,
know.
I
I
agree.
hope college students think more about this, because if they're complaining about how hard it is to find a job, but they're also supporting minimum wage, I think it's a contradiction in a way.
Yeah, I agree, bro.
Mm,
Again, it's like being shallow, not thinking about, the consequences of some of these things that on paper look great, but if you dig a little deeper, there's actually a lot of sort of,
complexities.
yeah, it's pretty complex.
Also, this could tie into overseas, why jobs are going overseas,
Mhm.
right? To people who would
Yeah,
work for less.
yeah. A really, really good example of that is like cruise ships. Like the reason like cruise companies are like register their ships in like random countries that like we've never heard of is not only because of like the tax benefits, but it's also because they can hire people from like foreign workers who are willing to work for like
Much
five
less.
dollars an hour.
Right.
Whereas like if you're an American cruise, you have to pay everybody like a certain amount, which is like way higher than someone in from like Brazil would do it for, right?
Mm, right.
Um, it's actually very funny. Like a lot of these like Caribbean, like Royal Caribbean, they're based in like Miami or something,
Mm,
but
mm,
yet they're like registered in the Bahamas hiring Brazilian workers, right?
right.
Like,
Yes.
you know,
Or it's finding these tax havens. Apple's like taking
yeah,
its money and putting it elsewhere, right? And so it's like, it's ironic in a way, because the more enforcement you try to put on it, it actually makes the situation worse in a
mm,
way. But let's play devil's advocate, so we're not all supporting one position. One of the things people say with minimum wage is that, let's say there's a single mom, right? She has to work to support her kid. She's a waitress, right? She can't earn enough to support her bills.
yeah,
That's why we need the minimum wage. How do you respond to that story? Because this is one of the things where you can't just say, well, it sucks for her because she's a
yeah,
working
yeah.
mom,
You can't
right?
say
It
that.
also plays to the emotion, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
emotional. This is what you mean. It's like,
hmm,
well, what can it's it's hard to respond like, there's three ways to convince someone of something: ethos, pathos, logos, right? This is
hmm,
such a strong pathos. Like, you can't override it with logic. It's hard
yeah.
to, yeah. So
I think that situation is like, like I don't think there's like one single like solution to that problem because
right.
there's always going to be like, not to discount like this single mom, but like there are like larger issues that affect way more people than just this one, single mom.
Mm,
Like when you raise the
right.
minimum wage, and it sucks. Like I agree, it sucks. Like it that should never be the case for anybody or anyone.
Mm,
But I think in like the grand scheme of things, unfortunately, like there are going to be cases like that, and there's very
yeah.
little that me or you or even the government can do about it.
Mm,
Um,
right.
so yeah,
And then
unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for that.
I see. If I answered, I think it'd be kind of cruel. It's that there's other factors in her life that led her to this situation. Why is she a single
But
mom to start with? We don't like to judge people in society today. We're like, you can't judge a single mom, you know? You don't know
yeah,
what she's been through. But I'm not judging her for why she's a single mom. The fact that she is a single mom means that she's the breadwinner for her family. She's the only one
yeah,
earning money, right? And then why she's stuck with a minimum wage job. If she had the skills she needed, she could be getting a better, higher paying job, right? You were
yeah,
saying how
exactly.
college is important, because without college, you'd be stuck at that minimum wage job and then probably no way out, right?
Hmm.
So it's important to, I guess, when you're young, to get the skills you need in order to raise a family. So I think there's a lot more
Yeah.
complicated factors than that. That's how I would respond to it. Of course, now that you're in the situation, what do you do? Well, that's
Hmm.
the problem. For us, I guess, and if you're in the church life, at least you have a community that's looking out for you, But for those people
Mhm.
in the world who I guess have no community and they're just working from 8 to 8 or even longer hours, I don't really know how they go through it. I think I would go crazy. But yeah, right.
It's tough, but I definitely agree like what you said about like there are definitely factors that led them to the point where they're in a position where they're working minimum wage being a single
Right.
mom. But you know, I mean, you know,
It's, it's beyond us to
yes,
solve
beyond
in a
that.
way.
Yeah,
Right. Would you consider yourself a capitalist? I know there's a lot of things between capitalism, socialism. Oh no, we're mixed, right? Or in the middle. Would you consider yourself a capitalist, or what do you consider yourself as?
sure. I'll say I'm a capitalist. I think the U.S. itself is capitalist. Um, you know, like I don't think there's many places in the world where you can, you know, come from basically nothing and work your way up. I mean, there's so many stories of that.
Mm.
Um, and
Do,
yeah,
do you think we've become less capitalist over the years? Like Social Security is not capitalism, right? Yet our government, we have that. What other things? Healthcare is universal healthcare is not capitalist, but we have
it's
that.
not. I
What
mean,
minimum
we
wage
don't have
technically?
that yet. We don't have that yet. I don't
Uh-huh,
think.
uh-huh.
But um, yeah, I mean,
Do we need to return to pure capitalism then? Because this mixed thing is like, what is this mixed thing causing the issue?
I don't think it. I don't know if it's like good to just put us in like capitalists or not. I think like there are
Mm,
definitely aspects of like socialism that could work along with what we have right now, or like
mm.
aspects of capitalism that aren't very good that we should do away with. But
What would be the capitalism aspects bad? Like sweatshops?
I mean, I don't think they have those in America, but I
Right.
mean,
But the products
yeah,
we
just
get
yeah,
perhaps
I
are
mean,
made in like Apple, right? It doesn't
yeah,
manufacture its phones, but in China they have those
yeah.
sweatshops doing it.
It's like same thing with Nike, like in like Bangladesh or whatever. They're paying their workers like cents or something. I don't know, but
Right. So have we
yeah.
exported the dark side of capitalism to other parts of the world?
I mean, I don't think you really see any dark sides of like really dark sides of capitalism here. So like I'd assume so. Yeah.
Because we
Like
get all the good stuff of capital. We get the goods. We can borrow money from China, Bangladesh to pay for our own goods, which I find berserk. It's crazy. We're getting the goods other people make while also borrowing money. Not that's not ours. I don't know how long does it sustain. I've talked
yeah.
with this about Alan that our parents came to the U.S. to find better opportunity, right, and to just have a better life. And then is there a possibility that it reverses because of the policies we have? In some ways, I think other nations, perhaps even China, might have a freer market than us, right? We talk a lot about taxing corporations. I think our corporation tax rate is higher than China's. So in that sense, is China more capitalist than the US?
No, I wouldn't go that far.
You
I
wouldn't
think
go that far.
I think China's still pretty far away from what you would call a capitalist society. But
Its government definitely has a lot of control
yeah,
over its
its
economy.
government has a lot of control. But um
What do you think about that government control? Good thing, bad thing?
um
They dealt with COVID better than us, right? We had
I'm
democracies.
for like less government control. I mean, like
Mm,
in China, like they censor a lot of stuff on the internet, or
that's right.
a lot of what the government wants you to see. Like they'll make
Tennis
sure you
star,
see it.
right? The tennis star who came up, Peng Shuai. She came
Yeah,
up
yeah, and
with
then she like disappeared, right?
she disappeared and then she came back and said it's not sexual assault, right? It was a misunderstanding.
Yeah,
I don't know how
yeah,
much torture she went through to get her to say that, but I presume it's torture. Why would you send a message that you were sexually assaulted by a government official and then 3 weeks later say like it's blown out of proportion? I think it's
yeah,
very fishy.
yeah. Actually, like the ironic thing is, I feel like the more control a government has, like the shadier they are, or like the shadier their practices
Mm.
are. I
So
mean,
you
like if
like checks and balances.
yeah, yeah. I think the
Mm.
way that America is right now, I think it's fine. Like I think it's
Oh.
good. But
Hmm.
like China, like I don't think so. Like or like just basically any government that like heavily censors its people or controls what is being put out. Um,
Ah. So
I
govern
but like honestly, like the way America is right now, I think it's fine. I don't think.
Really, some people would say the opposite, that it's out of control, but you think it's fine. But let's put it this way. I mean, I'll be more hard towards you, right? China didn't have as many COVID deaths as ours because they were able to implement, they have a central system to keep people quarantined. Of course, this might infringe upon human rights, but in the end, the US, because we have two parties at each other, even things like masking or getting a vaccine, it becomes politicized, right? So I guess people could point to this and say this is a weakness of democracy. But would you prefer that? Because there's still some shady stuff that the government would do, and that's far worse than COVID.
No, no, honestly, no. I mean, bro, in China, they were like literally like locking people in their homes.
Yes, that's right.
Like I, I, like I don't care, or not like I don't care, but like
Mm,
in America, it's like at least people had like the choice, right? Whereas in China,
yes.
like people like starved in their like apartments and because
Yeah.
the government like forced them in there. Like it's not okay.
That's
Like
that.
regardless of like how many
Mm,
COVID cases you have, just in my opinion.
it's a principle of not forcing someone to do
Yeah.
something they don't want. I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What about like vaccine mandates? Right. It's supposedly something good for you,
Mhm.
right? But some people don't want to get it,
Yeah.
right? Should we accept that they won't get it? Or I guess in France, their president's trying to push them, make laws that forbid you from going to a restaurant, certain restaurants or public places if you don't have a vaccine,
Mhm.
right? Should we keep pressuring them to do so? Or it's just let them have their decision, and even though it might not be good for society, there's nothing we could do about it except convince them through talking with them.
I mean, to be honest, I don't think convincing people to get the vaccine has been very effective. I think
Mm,
the people who are against the vaccine from the beginning are most of them are still against the vaccine. But what I will say though is in terms of like a vaccine mandate, um, I don't really have too big of a problem with that personally, right? Because like when you grow up, you're getting like a bunch of vaccines, right? Like as a
yes,
baby, right? You're
right.
getting a lot of vaccines, and I'm not too sure about this, but maybe you can opt out of those. But I think for the most part, like people get those vaccines because,
Mm,
right, they protect you from the deadliest diseases in the world.
right.
Um, so in the same sense, I guess the COVID vaccine would, you know, it would make sense for people to get the COVID vaccine, but
Mm,
some people, yes, are more about the principle of being able to choose and not trusting the government or whatever they feel or whatever reason they don't want to get the vaccine.
gotcha. We've got an election coming up at the end of this year,
Yeah.
2022. They're saying a red wave's gonna sweep in, right? What do you think the Democrats failed at so badly that they're just so unpopular right now? I think Biden's poll number is super low.
Yeah,
Like
bro.
we say Trump numbers were low, Biden's numbers are very
It,
low.
it's
What'd the
like
old man do?
it's it's more it's not it's less about what he didn't do or did do. It's more about what he didn't do. I think a lot of people expected a lot more from Joe Biden and the Democratic Party when they voted for him.
Hmm.
And like, let's not forget, a lot of people voted blue or for Joe Biden because they just hated Trump. Like that was literally the only reason why.
Yes, that's right.
Um, and I don't think they really understood or knew too much about Joe Biden's administration and a lot of their policies and a lot of the ways that they would handle situations. But once they saw him as president and some of his blunders that he made, or you know, the fact that you can very clearly see that he's not fully in it.
Mm,
Um, mentally, I think people are starting to realize that now. They're like, wait a minute, like, um, this is this is not what I expected, and maybe something needs to change.
right.
Um, but
2016's election between Hillary and Trump, people were like, it's picking between a box and a basket of rotten apples, right? With
yeah,
Biden and Trump, I guess I guess what you're saying is there's a core group of people that they chose Biden over Trump because of just how Trump was acting. Maybe I think it's because of how he handled coronavirus, and then
mhm,
also what he was saying about the election, right?
yeah,
For me, what's frustrating is that if I don't vote for Biden, then I've got to vote for someone who continues to say that the 2020 election is rigged, you know? And I think that's not very healthy for democracy, right? And
yeah,
then there's people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, right? Their opinions are kind of wild, I would say. Like during Biden's speech, he was talking about his son, right, who got cancer and died. And then Lauren Boebert was shouting over him and saying how 13 people in Afghanistan died because of him, the service members who got blown up by ISIS-K, right? I mean,
mhm,
you can argue that, if Biden handled withdrawal from Afghanistan, that wouldn't have happened. But you don't do that when like he's
yeah,
talking about his
yeah,
dead side, right?
yeah,
And so there's just certain things in the Republican Party that it's just like I can't call myself a Republican, but then Democrats, it's like there's some
yeah.
things
There's
that
things on
I
the
can't,
yeah,
yeah, that I
yeah,
can't agree with too. So I'm like a partyless person. What am I to
mhm,
do?
yeah. In a sense, that's actually how I kind of feel, but I think for me, like, I would rather be like leaning towards the right than to the left. Um,
Why
I don't
is
know if
that?
you feel the same way. I
Mm,
mean, maybe it's just like the stuff that I see, but I feel
mm,
like people on the left are just out of control, like way more than people on the right. Obviously like both sides. There's definitely crazy people, but just
right.
from my personal experience dealing with like real people, um,
Mm,
I think the people that I've met that were on the right were generally more pleasant than the people on the left. Um,
interesting.
yeah.
Because on the news media, I guess the right would say it's biased towards the left, but on news, you see like Trump supporters on January 6th storming the Capitol, right? I guess on news, there's also the George Floyd protests, right? And some of it resulted in looting and arsoning. I think one of our meeting halls in Atlanta got burned down because of someone who arson. It was in the church
Oh wow.
newsletter, right? So what they did, and then people say, well, in a protest or like there's always some bad apples, right? And so I guess there's just been a lot of social unrest, whether it's George Floyd protests or Trump supporters, right? But you say that it's crazy, the left is crazier,
Yeah.
right?
I personally think so.
To
And
you,
again, that's just like I'm not saying that's how it is like
mm,
objectively. It's just like
how
my personal
what you see things. So let's
yeah.
say you could sit down with Joe Biden right now. How could he
Mhm.
make it up to you and prove to you he's not crazy? Rest of the Democratic Party is not crazy.
First of all, I would like to see that he still is like sharp as like mentally, because like there are definitely times where I feel like he's just out of it. Like
Did you watch the State of the Union?
I watched like clips of it where he was just going,
You know,
or he
Ukrainians, right? He messed up and said Iranians,
yeah, like
right?
that should never happen. Like forget what people think about like what Trump should or shouldn't say. Like at least like Trump like knew himself what he was gonna say. But I think with Biden, it's like on the outside, it's like, dude, like this guy is like not fit to be president if he's like confusing like Iranian, like you said, with Iranians with Ukrainians. I just don't, think that's good at all.
Right.
Um,
So Biden He's old, right? He has some mental slips, to put it minorly, right? Cognitive decline, if some people see it that way. How about Democratic Party policies,
Hmm.
right? They don't want to advocate defund the police. That's just the progressives in the Democratic Party doing it.
Hmm.
But are they not condemned for it either, right? Is that rhetoric you're afraid of? Or like $15 minimum wage? Is that what you like to see changed?
I mean, wait, so you're saying like the ideas that some people on the left have, they aren't like challenged? Is that what you're saying? Or
Yeah, in certain way, like certain ideas, like goes back to the question. If you could sit down with Democratic Party leaders right now, right, and tell them this is why I can't vote Democrat. You got to
Mhm.
change this and so and so. What is it that they got to change?
I think the big thing, the overarching theme,
Mm,
the biggest reason why, probably one of the biggest reasons why I really try to stay away from the left is they don't really respect your opinion. Like,
mm,
you know, like
ah,
everybody has their opinion, right? Like, there's no
yes,
one person that doesn't have an opinion, but and people are supposed to have opinions, but it gets to the point where it's a problem when you're calling somebody literally a racist just because of their opinion of like who they think is a better presidential candidate. Like I
mm,
saw, posts on social media where people are like, if you vote for Trump, you're a racist. Like I I don't think that
yeah,
that's okay at all.
right.
I think people should be, maybe the same thing can be said about the right, but I just see it from the left way more where you're sort of categorized based on an opinion that you have. And they just have no respect for your opinion at all.
And
Whereas,
right, they seem to have they seem to be sitting on a high horse. Like my opinion is the right opinion,
yeah,
right? And then also that because of this PC culture, there's a specific way to talk. And if you don't talk a
mm,
certain way, then that's over. Like, let me give it to you this way. I had a professor, I was writing a blog post on like why there's no women in STEM fields, right? And I said like girls are kept out of STEM fields and whatnot. And then she's like, please use the word women instead of girls because if you're gonna use girls, then you call men boys. I was kind of stunned by that
that's
because
ridiculous.
well, that's what my professor did. So, I mean, this is like in her sphere, she can do that, but it
Mm,
really like kind of soured with me, you know? It's just
yeah,
like, I didn't even have like all this intention. And then it goes back to the intention versus speech thing. You're so focused on my
yeah,
speech that you think that my intention is equivalent to my speech, right? That I want to objectify or um like what's it make girls look childish or women be like children or something when I had no intention of doing that,
yeah.
right?
Mm,
So I mean, I think that's what drives me away from Democratic Party is that I can't talk as I would, it makes people afraid to talk.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, bro.
they don't
So
defend
true.
free speech, I
So
don't
true.
think, right?
So
That's
true.
what I'm afraid of too. um yeah, there's a lot of things you say like Joe Rogan, do I agree with him that injecting ivermectin works for COVID? No. Can he have his right to say that? Sure. Did he say
Yeah.
the N word on his podcast? Yes. Was it in a bad way, like to um dehumanize black people? No. So I don't know why. And then you compile a clip of him saying the N word over and over multiple times. You can feel offended by it. I don't see why. Like I guess for Asians, I guess the bad word is chink or something, right?
Hmm.
Someone called me a chink, fine. I'm okay
Yeah.
with it,
Yeah, me
right?
too, bro.
We can't say
But
the N
some
word though.
people are, yeah.
Some people would say no, right? But see, if you were white and you're like, I can call us a chink, what's wrong with that? They were like, oh man, that's racist. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? But since I'm
Yeah.
Asian, I can call myself a chink. You know, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
gets me crazy. It's like this group of intellectuals that I just can't speak. It's like how do I express my ideas? It's
Hmm.
almost I almost had to learn all your rules first before I can formulate my own opinion. So
Yeah.
that's what kills me. I'm trying to change that with this podcast. That's what I'm trying to do too. Yeah.
And the problem is when you like don't know their rules, like they somehow expect you to already know their rules.
Right.
And then if you like accidentally go against their rules, then they just get mad at you, and it's like,
Offended. Right.
yeah, they get offended. It's like, what am I supposed to do, right?
Mm, mm. It only leaves you the option with you comply or you're my enemy,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know quite know. I don't know where this is heading, but yeah. Did you have anything you want to talk about?
Um, no, it's just my one question for you was, how are you holding up in quarantine or COVID, like this age of COVID?
Hmm. I guess I'm okay. Um, People say that I sound a bit more sad, look a bit more sad. Um, but I guess I've also been thinking a lot about what to do. I feel like during
Mm,
college, I never really thought about myself or what I would do after graduating. So getting to graduation afterwards is like going over a waterfall, right? You didn't prepare for it and you're just in the boat, and then next stage in life, right? There were some factors that I guess alleviated the pain of going over a waterfall or like just helped me float. I'm fortunate enough to have a job right now, right? Even though with all this minimum wage stuff, right, it's very hard to get a job, and just economically wise with inflation, all that, it's very hard to get a job. So I'm thankful for that. I guess I'm okay. No one in my family really passed away from COVID, right?
mm.
I have food to eat. I guess I need more exercise.
Good.
I've
Yeah.
been talking to less people, I feel. That's why I started out this
Makes sense.
podcast again,
Makes sense.
because to at least talk with one person each week and hopefully grow that network.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I'm kind of disillusioned by talking with people in big groups because I feel that in big groups you can't really, it's very shallow talk. You can't get to talk very deep. And
Yeah.
then I feel that people in the end are really after whatever's for themselves. They don't care. If you had to choose, people would care about themselves more
Hmm.
rather than collective ideal, which
Yeah.
I guess something I learned, but I don't know if it makes me cynical. That's just my takeaway from college. Yeah.
Mm,
But I still try to help others, and even though I guess sometimes that leaves me kind of with the short end of the stick.
mm,
Like, what do I do?
mm.
But I hope that whoever's listening, I don't know. Hopefully a rosier perspective would be that even though if it's you're feeling kind of down, or you just don't know what to do, just take the next step that you think fits you. And
Mhm,
don't remain stuck. And it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. There's some days that, like, I think for you it's video games. For me, sometimes video games is just our way out, right? Or just lay in bed and just don't want to get up, right?
mhm,
For me, I also just go on a walk. At least I'm moving my 2 feet, right? I guess it's some exercise in a way. But I just feel
mm,
bad for those kids who are so down that they can't get up. And so
mm,
I don't know how to help them, but that's what I want. That's what hopefully this podcast will do. Reach out to more people eventually. How about
sounds
yeah,
good.
sounds
Yeah.
good. All right, Sean. I guess we'll end here with our first podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course, bro.
Okay.